Who made this bread?
For weeks, the richest rancher in Montana searched every road because
The first bite stopped him cold. Caleb Harper had eaten in ranch houses, cattle camps, church socials, and busy frontier towns across Montana Territory, but never had a simple loaf of bread carried a taste that felt like home itself. The crust was golden and crisp, the inside soft as a cloud, and every bite somehow reminded him of the mother he had buried 12 winters earlier. Without another word, the wealthy rancher placed the bread on the counter and asked the old shopkeeper the only question that mattered. "Who made this bread?" The old man shrugged, saying it had arrived with the morning wagon from someone who never stayed long enough to be noticed. Caleb left the store with only one mission. He would search every road, every farm, and every lonely cabin until he found the hands that had baked that unforgettable loaf. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness, second chances, and simple acts of compassion can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another inspiring Old West tale. The year was 1887, and the plains stretched endlessly beneath the Montana sky. Caleb Harper was known throughout 3 counties as one of the richest ranchers in the territory. Hundreds of cattle grazed on his land, dozens of cowboys worked beneath him, and travelers admired his success wherever he rode. Yet behind every achievement lived a quiet loneliness that money had never managed to erase. His parents were gone, he had never married, and each evening the great ranch house echoed with silence. Meals prepared by hired cooks filled his stomach but never his heart. That one loaf of bread had awakened something he believed had disappeared forever. For the next several days Caleb carried the remaining piece of bread inside a cloth sack on his saddle. He visited every bakery, every boarding house, every church gathering, and every settlement within 50 miles. At each stop he asked the same question. Most people laughed politely. Others pointed him toward another village. A few claimed they had heard rumors of a mysterious woman who sometimes traded fresh bread for flour but never stayed to collect attention. Nobody knew her name. Nobody knew where she lived. The search slowly became the town's greatest mystery. Children ran beside Caleb's horse shouting guesses. Storekeepers debated who could possibly bake so perfectly. Even traveling merchants started asking strangers whether they had seen a quiet woman delivering bread before sunrise. Weeks passed, and still Caleb found nothing except scattered clues that always led nowhere. One rainy afternoon, an elderly widow named Martha Benson quietly stopped Caleb outside the church. She hesitated before speaking, almost afraid to reveal what she knew. Years earlier she had noticed a shy young woman bringing vegetables and fresh bread to families whose husbands had died during harsh winters. The woman always disappeared before sunrise and refused payment. Martha remembered following the wagon tracks one morning until they vanished near a lonely hillside several miles outside town. There, hidden beneath grass and earth, stood a small dugout home almost invisible from the road. Caleb thanked the widow and rode through steady rain until evening shadows covered the prairie. Finally he spotted faint smoke rising from a chimney that barely reached above the hillside. The little home seemed swallowed by the earth itself. The wooden door looked weathered, the roof covered with sod and wild grass. A tiny vegetable garden struggled beside the entrance, protected by a crooked fence repaired countless times. Everything about the place whispered hardship, yet every corner showed signs of careful hands refusing to surrender. Standing at the doorway was a young woman named Abigail Turner. Flour covered the front of her faded green dress, and loose strands of auburn hair framed a tired face that still carried quiet dignity. Surprise filled her eyes as she noticed the well-known rancher standing before her. She expected another stranger asking for directions, never imagining he had traveled across half the county searching for her. Caleb gently removed the cloth from the remaining piece of bread and held it forward. He explained that this loaf had led him across towns, farms, and lonely roads because he had never tasted anything like it. Abigail lowered her eyes, embarrassed rather than proud. She admitted she baked bread simply because it was the only thing her late mother had taught her perfectly before passing away from illness. Selling a few loaves each week bought enough flour to survive another month. Living alone inside the dugout was difficult, but she had nowhere else to go after losing both parents within 2 years. As Caleb looked around the tiny home, he noticed patched blankets, carefully repaired furniture, and shelves containing only a handful of supplies. Yet despite the poverty, every surface shined with remarkable cleanliness. Fresh flowers rested inside an old glass bottle, a Bible sat carefully wrapped in cloth, and several cooling loaves filled the room with comforting warmth. The place possessed something many wealthy homes lacked. It felt peaceful. Over the following weeks, Caleb found reasons to visit again and again. Sometimes he brought sacks of flour, pretending he had purchased too much by mistake. Other days he offered vegetables from his ranch or repaired the broken fence surrounding the garden. Abigail accepted only what she believed she could repay through hard work. Pride prevented her from taking charity, but gratitude filled every smile she tried to hide. Eventually Caleb discovered another secret. Every Friday before sunrise, Abigail baked extra bread, then quietly delivered it to widows, injured cowboys, and hungry children without leaving her name. She often skipped meals herself so someone else would not go hungry. The townspeople praised anonymous miracles without realizing they came from the lonely woman living beneath the hillside. The discovery humbled Caleb more deeply than any sermon he had ever heard. Here he was, a man with overflowing barns and countless cattle, while the poorest baker in the territory spent her little wealth feeding strangers. That realization changed him forever. Instead of simply helping Abigail, Caleb decided to change the entire community. He converted an unused building in town into a public bakery where anyone struggling could work honestly for fair wages. Abigail reluctantly agreed to manage the ovens after Caleb promised that every loaf would be earned through dignity rather than charity. Widows found employment, orphaned teenagers learned useful skills, and hungry families could always receive fresh bread without shame. Before long, the smell of warm bread drifted through the streets every morning, becoming a symbol of hope across the valley. People who once ignored the quiet baker now respected her deeply. They admired not only her remarkable talent, but also the compassion she had practiced long before anyone noticed. Caleb never took credit for the bakery. Whenever someone praised him, he simply smiled and pointed toward Abigail, saying that one loaf of bread had taught him more about generosity than years of success ever had. Seasons passed, and the lonely dugout no longer represented isolation. Instead, it became a place where neighbors gathered to remember humble beginnings. Abigail never forgot the difficult years that shaped her heart, and Caleb never forgot the day a simple question changed the course of his life. If this story has touched your heart so far, please write "Kindness still lives" in the comments below. We'd love to know that this message reached people who still believe compassion can transform the world. Years later, travelers crossing Montana often stopped at the famous bakery without knowing its history. They simply heard that the bread there carried an unusual warmth no other town could match. Those who knew the truth understood that the secret ingredient had never been flour or yeast. It had always been sacrifice, humility, and a heart that chose kindness even when nobody was watching. Before this story ends, if it moved you in any way, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to the channel. Every interaction helps us continue sharing inspiring stories of faith, courage, kindness, and hope from the Old West. Sometimes the greatest miracle does not arrive with wealth, fame, or power. Sometimes it begins with one forgotten loaf of bread, one quiet question, and one lonely woman living beneath the earth whose kindness was so extraordinary that it changed not only a rancher, but an entire town forever. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is that the people the world overlooks are often the very ones carrying the gifts that can heal it.